Hello and welcome to April 26th edition of This Week in South Carolina in Session. I'm Gavin Jackson outside the State House here in Columbia. Well, we just wrapped up the third legislative week up here at the State House with House lawmakers just now getting out of session. It's around 4 o'clock and they had just wrapped up an extended Thursday session, something I have really rarely seen up here at the State House, and it really centered around debate over the House, the Senate version of the budget. The budget has now been sent back to the House and they were debating some budget amendments on there, and Democrats were really fired up over this one key amendment to the budget, which dealt with some surplus funds that specifically sent $45 million to a lab, a new crime lab for the state law enforcement division, which is badly needed, officials say, but at the same time, House lawmakers were somewhat caught off guard. They were not expecting so much money to be devoted to one item when there are so many other needs in the state. So House lawmakers really just wanted some more time to review this 30-page amendment, which they said they had just seen today. So it took them several hours to filibuster. It's really the only option they have available to them because they are the minority party, but they did filibuster and they did finally get the ability to review the amendment. The House did not vote after hours of debate. So we have some more details on that in a minute. We did see some major action over in the Senate today. You might remember yesterday when there was an attempt by senators to put the dismemberment abortion ban bill into special order status. That gives it debate priority over other bills on the Senate floor. That measure failed 26-18. However, there was another way that lawmakers could go about getting that dismemberment abortion ban bill, which is pretty popular among Republicans, onto the debate priority status, and that was through the Rules Committee. They had the ability to actually just get a majority vote to get that onto the special order status, and they did that by voice vote today. So instead of having the normal 2/3 for special order status, they were managed to do this with a majority vote. So that bill is now going to be the top bill being debated in the Senate until the lawmakers can either sit down, Democrats who plan to filibuster for the next 6 days, or some other compromise is reached. Because I spoke with Senator Brad Hutto, who did speak today, and we have a clip of him speaking, who said that he will continue to filibuster this bill as long as it takes, even if that means no other bills, controversial bills that are stuck behind this bill, since it's in debate priority status, get stuck and they don't get passed. So we have comments from Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey, Senator Larry Grooms, who was arguing in for this bill getting in special order status, as well as Senator Hutto too. So a lot happened today, so we're going to lead right off right now with that abortion bill, that dismemberment ban abortion bill, moving forward into special order status in the Senate.
A procedure such as a dismemberment abortion should not be legal here. It should not. We shouldn't stand for it. I wish we could end all abortion. I do, because I believe in life. I believe it's the most important thing that government can do is to protect the life of people. And I believe unborn children are people. But we also have to operate under the ruling of Roe v. Wade that essentially said that unborn children are property.
I'm sorry, Senator from Berkeley, the time has expired.
Even if you pass this, you're not going to change the fact that dismemberment abortions occur in South Carolina, and they will continue to occur in South Carolina, because that is the safest method of abortion when a woman's life is in danger. And that after the 20-week period, that is the way that almost every one of them is performed. So if you're, and last year, our information is that there were probably 20 or fewer, okay? So you're not striking at anything major, but what you are doing is buying us a lawsuit that every state who's passed this so far has lost. It's not the law in any state that's passed it, because it's been enjoined by the federal courts everywhere. So I think what we're saying to the people of South Carolina is, with all the things that are facing us, with the electrical debacle, with education, with other things, the budget coming back, that we're going to get tied up in this Senate for the next 6 days, and this is all we're going to talk about.
So we did get to catch up with Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey. He's a Republican from Edgefield, and he did tell us that he is not worried about Senator Hutto's planned filibuster for the next 6 days. He said Senator Hutto's been speaking for the past 3 months at a variety of different filibusters, and he's not been worried about that. There have been several debates featuring special order status bills, and Senator Hutto has been a part of those as well. But right now we're going to talk to Senator Massey and get his thoughts on the SCE&G bill that we saw Senate House lawmakers yesterday pass back to the Senate, insisting upon cutting the entire 18% nuclear surcharge from SCE&G customers' bills. Now, you might remember that House lawmakers amended a joint resolution S954 that the Senate sent them to completely get rid of that 18% nuclear surcharge on all 700,000 SCE&G customers' bills. That 18% surcharge is about $27 a month that customers pay for the failed VC Summer nuclear project. Customers are still paying for that project despite the fact that it is not going anywhere and that it has completely failed, a $9 billion failure. However, Senate lawmakers have reduced that rate from 18% to 5%, a 13% rate. They sent that version back to the House this week. House lawmakers stood by their original plan to cut rates down to zero, and now we're going to a conference committee. And today we did see conferees be assigned, 3 from the House and 3 from the Senate. These conferees will get together soon and hash out a compromise bill. Now, there's a possibility that we don't go anywhere, that we don't get back to zero, but we stick with this 5% plan. That's very likely. So we'll have to wait and see there. Again, the governor is on board for 0%. He will veto anything that's not zero. So they need to really make sure that they have the ability to overturn a gubernatorial veto by a 2/3 vote. So that's something to focus on as well. And we have some other quotes from Senator Massey on some of the day's activities. Let's go to the Senator Massey right now.
But I'm optimistic that we can work something out. I think that the House members have been working very hard on this throughout the year and even in last year as well. They want to provide rate relief. They want to make sure that the Public Service Commission is going to have the time necessary to make an informed decision. The senators want to do that too. We've got a few disagreements on some things, but I think this is such a big issue that we'll have enough people come together and we'll work it out. But I do think that we'll allow ourselves the opportunity to come back if we have to deal with something. Those bills came out of subcommittee yesterday in Judiciary. They'll be on full committee on Tuesday. So there's still going to be opportunities to do more of those things in the time we have left. Well, it's an extremely important issue, and I think there are a lot of South Carolinians who would like for us to move on that issue as well. You're talking about ripping babies apart. I mean, that's something that gets a lot of attention, and I think it's definitely worthy of having a conversation about that on the Senate floor. I think there are still plenty of opportunities for us to be able to get done what we need to get done. The question is whether you've got the votes in order to move things, and if you do, we can make it happen. If you don't, then we move along.
And like Senator Massey said right there, then he was talking about that plastic bag ban bill, which he says, despite the threat of that filibuster over the abortion ban, the dismemberment abortion ban bill, and the contested nature of that plastic bag ban bill, which would prohibit municipalities and cities and towns across the state of South Carolina from passing ordinances outlawing single-use bags, he thinks it can still move. And we have 6 days. I mean, it's a very tight time frame, but this bill has already passed the House. It would need to be sent back to the House for them to concur with any Senate amendments, but he is still optimistic at this point, especially since Senate rules kind of get a little bit more relaxed in the final days of session. So they can pull things from the floor. It doesn't take as long for things to have to be on the calendar. There's a lot of different maneuvering that really takes place in the last 2 weeks that turns the, quote, deliberative body into somewhat of a racetrack. So very interesting to see. But now let's go right back to the House and talk about what we saw on the House floor dealing with those the $8.2 billion budget bill that they are now finally taking up since the Senate has sent back to them. So since the budget bill originated in the House, goes to the Senate amends it, sends it back to the House. That's the point we're at right now. And they've made plenty of changes to that bill, especially how to spend some surplus dollars, which is where we saw the major contention today on the House floor, specifically from Democrats who are not happy with the plan that they said they had just found out about. And a big major point of contention was the $45 million that would go to the State Law Enforcement Division's new crime lab. That's a substantial amount of money for a crime lab. However, they say that they desperately need it because cases are being slow to be resolved. So there's a lot of need for that to happen. And we also did hear Democrats just say they wanted more time. And we did hear House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Brian White at the end there. He moved to adjourn after multiple attempts by Democrats to adjourn throughout the day so they can get more time to read over this bill. He moved in the end to adjourn to give everyone some more time after this long day of debate. So we're going to jump right now into Representative Merle Smith, kind of giving you an overview exactly about what this money is, where it could go, and then also some Democratic response to that.
There was $60 million that is in what we call the excess debt and lapsed debt line, which means that what we were paying for bonds was now no longer, we paid off those bonds and we don't need that money anymore. We decided as a body last year, this time when we voted, whatever the vote was, we decided we were not going to spend that money. It would make more sense for us to pay that money down, pay higher debt, pay that debt down, than to do this. That went over to the Senate. The Senate disagreed with us. They took the $60 million. And what they did is they took it and largely is funded with what we call projects. And so what we have to do is make a decision. Do we accept the Senate projects? Do we amend back? Do we spend this money or do we not spend this money? And so what this amendment represents is it represents us spending this money, but spending it on core functions of government. And I know we can have debates about whether $54 million towards a SLED lab is the best way to spend the money, but I don't think anyone can say that that is not a core function of government. Being able to test evidence and provide evidence in criminal trials is a core function of government, and that's what we have to do. And I can tell you right now, I'm not wild about $54 million going towards SLED. But at the end of the day, I get one vote as anyone else does, and there are amendments that are up here, and we'll have the ability to vote on it. But when you look at other things that are in here, our higher ed, we hear all these questions about higher education and us not funding higher education. So what do? We add more money to higher education in recurring dollars, something that we've been criticized for over the years. You heard about corrections. And we've talked about what we did with $13 million going towards corrections. And someone who was on the Joint Bond Review Committee that we heard from the corrections director the other day, this is money that they requested that helps improve security at the corrections. Mr. Wheeler will tell you, if you go over to Lee Correctional Institution right now, those, other than locks that have been broken on the cells, they have not changed the lock since they built the institution in 1990s. And so what they're asking, some of the security money is going to, is to go and start changing locks. After a while, the locks get broken. And you have to, like any other lock on our doors or anywhere else, you've got to service and maintenance those. That is not something we've done for years. We have not done a bond bill. We have not done anything that maintain the facilities in this state. And so what we're doing is taking this money that should be going off, that was appropriated to go off paying debt, and we're using it on one-time items.
And I hear that we are giving $54 million to SLED for them to build a laboratory. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before I give $54 million to anybody for anything, I want to see the specs. Show me the blueprint. Show me to the dollar where you're going to spend $54 million that we are not going to spend on school resource officers, because we know that there's a need. We believe in the Second Amendment. We believe in the Second Amendment. We believe that if something happens, we want to be prepared to defend ourselves, our family, our country, our state from those that seek to do us harm. We believe in the Second Amendment. Well, there are school children in South Carolina that are in places with no guns. And they have no guns because they have no school resource officers. Now, mind you, I'm not speaking of those children in my district because we got them. Richland County has them. Those of you that don't, you should be offended, or you at least should come up with an amendment to take some of the $54 million and send it to your county. If not, you are falling asleep on the job. Show me where the request was made from SLED for $54 million, and show me where they can spend $54 million in 1 year. This is a yearly budget.
And so if it goes to conference and the Senate insists upon this money, then you're going to have issues that they're going to have their projects funded, and that the state is, that we're going to not have any other options except to agree what they appropriated. So I think that's part of the logic that we went through here, was if we're going to spend this money, Let's spend this money on the critical needs of the state and what we know that we have to have right now.
Okay. And just so that I guess all the members are clear, for anybody who may be confused, if this amendment were to pass or any other amendment, it's going to conference committee, and it's not the end of the road. There will be a debate in conference committee over whether or not whose version we go with. Do we meet in the middle or what?
Yes, sir. That's the way this works.
Okay. I guess the last question I have, and then I'll.
And that is your third to last week here at the State House wrapped up for you. Now we have 2 more weeks left. That's 6 legislative working days. We still don't have conferees yet for the Budget Conference Committee because House lawmakers are still taking up the changes to the House, to the budget that the Senate made. So if there's one prediction I could probably give you, it's that there might be some extended time given to the budget. I mean, we've always seen long hours on those budget conference committees, but this one is really getting close up against that May 10th deadline. Now again, if they go past May 10th, as long as they amend the sine die resolution, certain bills, certain conference committees can still be debated past May 10th, whereas all other bills that are not passed by either chamber and then sent to the governor for his signature or veto are then dead for the year. So anything that's not in conference committee that is encompassed by the sine die resolution is likely dead for the year if it's not passed out. So that's a lot to happen in the last 6 days here, especially when you need to usually send a bill back to the House or the Senate, especially if there's an amendment on a bill, would have to go back to the other chamber. So things get really, really crazy up here, but we will be following all the craziness for you the last 6 days up here, live every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on SCE&G's Facebook page, our YouTube page, and my Twitter account at Gavin Jackson. And in order to keep track of where things are going and what committee meetings are happening, when and where, check out the State House Daybook on SCETV.org every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And you can also find some State House roundup of news headlines there as well, all in one place, really easy. Find out everything you need to know about what's going on at the State House any given day. Also, you can listen to the South Carolina Lead podcast every Tuesday. That's when I speak with reporters who cover the big stories in the state of South Carolina, specifically in politics and other breaking news stories, to get some more context, some more in-depth insight as to what's going on with these big stories. They go behind the headlines with me. We talk for about 20 minutes, giving you a little bit more of a full story about some of these big stories coming out. Most recently, we spoke with reporters about the prison riots at Lee Correctional Institution, as well as UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. So be sure to check that out. You can find that on scpublicradio.org, or you can subscribe through your podcast app on your Apple iPhone, and also in the Android store or wherever you find podcasts. And be sure to listen to South Carolina Public Radio every Friday when Russ McKinney recaps the legislative week on his program, State House Week. And every Friday at 7:30 p.m., Charles Bierbauer sits down with newsmakers on every SCTV station at 7:30 and This Week in South Carolina. So be sure to tune into that every Friday at 7:30 p.m. on SCE TV. I'm Gavin Jackson for SCE TV here at the State House in Columbia.